So we did the market entry for Apple into Kazakhstan, and the question as to why we chose the company Apple, well, because it's a fairly large American technology company that's fairly ubiquitous, and the market prospects of Kazakhstan are uh, pretty ambiguous to most unaffiliated parties, typically because it's a relatively obscure country, and that just entails that not a lot of people understand the resources or history of. So it does have good prospects, and it does seem like it could be a good fit for a up and coming, well, not up and coming, but a company like Apple that's looking to grow and expand, which cell phones are fairly commonplace in up and growth in the internet sector.
So their economic growth is primarily based on gas and oil revenues. Their GDP is 35% and 75% of exports. During 2019, their GDP grew by 4.5% as domestic demand, business spending, and construction boom supported economic activity. They are dependent on oil prices, and the economy relies heavily on hydrocarbon exports. The banking system has been fragile since the crisis of 2008. Loans rose to 9.4% of total loans by the first half of 2019. Unemployment was 4.8% in 2019 and is expected to increase by 3% due to COVID-19. But 2021 is predicted to decrease to 5.8%. Wages are still on the rise due to all the economic growth that happened in 2010. And for their political system and structure, since independence, their political system has been dominated by Nur-Sultan for more than 25 years. He was a former high-level Soviet official who became the country's first elected president in 1991. He resigned as president in March 2019, but still maintains significant powers as head of Security Council and chairman of the ruling Nur-Sultan Party. The most recent election held in January 2021 reaffirmed Nur-Sultan's commanding majority.
Stability of the Kazakhstan government. Ever since their independence in 1991, Kazakhstan has been moving consistently to improve its political system. In recent years, they have passed several laws regarding anti-corruption campaigns in the government, and they have privatized over 900 formerly state-run companies. According to the World Bank, political stability has weakened in the past decade. They rank among countries such as China, Russia, and Serbia. Controversies involving human rights abuses have been widespread with their past and current president. In 2018, their former president halted the formation of workers' union, and their current president is expected to carry on that trend. The pandemic has also has been questionable in Kazakhstan, as they've squashed most of the political dissent against it and against their handling of it. And this has led to widespread poverty, homelessness, and economic struggle throughout the country. And so with the new president at the helm, the civil rights being threatened, and economic hardship ravaging the country, the stability of Kazakhstan's government remains in limbo. And then potential political risks. Kazakhstan's current political climate is very shaky. Widespread authoritarian squashing of journalism and free speech has only fanned the flames of unrest there. The current economic situation, as the result of the pandemic, has caused a rise in terrorist attacks throughout the country. And their new president does not seem to help matters either, as he continues to push the country towards a more authoritarian regime by limiting free speech, keeping workers from forming unions, and limiting free expression of faith there. And their former president now holds the position of chairman of Security Council, which poses more concern, as it is likely, along with their current president now, they will continue to squash human rights campaigns throughout the country.
For their bribery and corruption index, Kazakhstan is globally lower in corruption with a score of 38 out of 100, placing them at 94 of the 183 countries that they studied. To the right, you'll see the diagram that shows the correlation of all the countries that they studied and how they ranked that as corrupt or non-corrupt. This trend has been on a steady decline in Kazakhstan since 2012, but may see more exposure due to COVID. This is a positive indication for business to enter as it relates to the corruption level.
For the unique aspects of written, oral, and nonverbal communication, Kazakh is a Turkic language which falls fairly outside of the scope of the American English speaker that typically Apple is going to employ. So as a linguistic barrier, they do possess challenges, but there also has been a push locally by the aforementioned political regime to convert from the Cyrillic alphabet to the Latin alphabet, which would make learning applications much easier for English speakers. They're also a culture of high context, so you have to be very direct with what you mean and what you say. There is also something to note that refusals should be very elaborate, and you should explain why you were refusing them. And in this context, you also need to remain very formal when communicating in a business setting if you want to be taken seriously without being detracted because of cultural differences and undermine your successes.
So looking at Hofstede's model of culture, what you have 6 here that are power distance, individualism, masculinity, uncertainty, avoidance, long-term orientation, and indulgence. So for Kazakhstan, the power distance basically is how a culture views hierarchical order. So for Kazakhstan, they view a very acceptable part in society. The individualism, this is more or less just how they view either collective or individual efforts in society. They rank pretty lowly in this section, which means that they're more of a collective culture. The masculinity versus femininity shows how competitive or how they show more caring attitudes and behaviors. So they're pretty in the middle on this part of it. And then on the next slide, it'll show the uncertainty avoidance, which is how reluctant they are to change or uncertainty. Kazakhstan here is pretty reluctant. They don't like very much change. Along with this, the long-term orientation shows how much they rely on their history and what they've done in the past to solve problems and issues. I think these are more or less tied together, and that's why they ranked high on this part as well. Their indulgence is how much a culture values their desires and impulses. They rank really low on this because Kazakhstan citizens don't typically indulge in themselves. This is viewed as something that's somewhat wrong. So they're more or less constrained by the social norms.
Still mute, sorry. The current population is 18.93 million. The growth rate is 1.21%. They have a relatively slow population growth rate. This allows the country to continue making economic progress in reducing poverty in years to come. The median age for a man is 29.3 and 31.9 for a woman. Islam is the most prominent religion. Over 70% of the population practices it. It's the ninth most considerable territory in the world. 87 cities are located in this large territory. The economy has been doing exceptionally well since the turn of the century, going from a low middle to upper middle economy in just 20 years. The GDP per capita has been multiplied by 6 during the same period. This means that they are currently the most significant and most robust economy in Central Asia. The most vital sectors of the economy are in energy, industry, and services such as technology, retail, and tourism. The annual household income reached a little over $3,000 in December of 2019. Poverty is a significant concern here. 6% of the population was estimated to live on less than $2 per day.
So Kazakhstan boasts the largest economy out of all the Central Asian countries, and it's primarily an export economy. They have a wealth of natural resources, which accounts up to 73% of their total exports. Their main exports are oil, copper, various ferrous metals, uranium, zinc, aluminum, and copper, with their largest export markets being to China, Italy, Russia, and the Netherlands, and France. Only 1.97% of their exports are bound for the United States. The United States holds about a $500 million negative trade balance with Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan's main imports are packaged medications, oil, iron, steel, and inorganic chemicals for manufacturing. Over half of their imports come from Russia and China, with the remaining coming from various countries, including South Korea, Germany, Italy, and Turkey. The United States accounts for just under 3% of Kazakhstan's total imports, with the majority being heavy machinery for mining and aerospace equipment. China is both their fastest growing export market and import market, as China continues their development of the Belt and Road Initiative, which will cut through a significant portion of Kazakhstan. This poses a threat to United States influence, as China will continue to pour more money into the Kazakhstan economy because of its key position in linking China with the Caspian Sea and Western Europe. And on that graph to the right, you can see the trade difference that the country carries in terms of billions of dollars.
So looking at the business environment of Kazakhstan, this graph here shows the different index levels and ranking within a global sense and a regional sense. Their best attributes here is their macroeconomic environment, market opportunities, and the labor market, which I've highlighted there. Recently, macroeconomic environment and market opportunities, if you can see the lighter shade of green there, has been on the increase in regional rank versus global rank. You'll see in macroeconomic environment 40, that's on the lower side of things, but it still has been dropping in a positive manner in ranks. Their overall position globally keeps them in the middle, but they're weaker among the Central Asian region. And like I said, the strong suits there have gained rankings as of 2007.
So when it comes to the inflation levels, the Kazakhstan tenge is, subject to much the same economic troubles as you would see in the nations, including the former Soviet Union. That being said, the trend in the graph in front does kind of follow economic trends globally, although the relatively lower wealth of Kazakhstan obviously causes a little bit of volatility. So when Apple's entering the market, there is that consideration that the local currency could, rise or bow based off of global trends, which they should be able to anticipate. As for, the exchange rates, it's relatively poor on the grander stage. I mean, as you can see, it's negligible compared to the US dollar, British pound, and the euro. But it does start to come up a little bit comparison to the Russian ruble and less so to the Chinese yuan, which is notable because their primary trade partners are Russia and China. As Jonathan pointed out, that there is more of a trade boom in terms of the Chinese. But when you look at its value compared to the Uzbek som, it's definitely valued much higher, which is very much a positive in terms of local power that Apple can seek to gain. So what we're seeing is a low international exchange, but a high local exchange. And in terms of risk of the devaluation versus the US dollar, there's definitely regional influences to consider. There is an understanding that, with its biggest partners being Russia and China, the United States doesn't always have the best relations with them. So economic sanctions targeted at either of the two, larger nations could influence the Kazakh tenge very negatively. And this is only relevant in terms that Apple needs to consider that the ability of its consumer and production value in Kazakhstan is going to follow the sanctions, which are fairly easy to follow if you pay attention to government forums.
Size and growth rate of the market. In the past couple of years, the Kazakhstan government has been making strides to encourage the adoption of technology in the more rural places of the country and has created this program called Digital Kazakhstan. And it's an initiative to push the country towards more widespread technology integration and adoption. Excuse me. In this program, there are 5 main directions that the government seeks. The first being the digitization of the economy. So like having most everything run off technology. The transition to a digital state, meaning most of their state procedures will be done through the internet. And number 3, the implementation of the digital Silk Way. Number 4, the evolution of the human capital assets. And number 5, the innovation ecosystem foundation. Under direction number 5, Kazakhstan plans to, quote, create conditions for technological entrepreneurship development with stable relations between business, academic domain, and state, as well as introductions of innovations into the industry. This 5th direction will be very beneficial for Apple if they decide to move into that market, as they will find it an easier time setting up operations with the assistance from the Kazakhstan's government. And as it stands, the Kazakhstan economy produces only about 4.8 million in phones and computers domestically, while importing 183.5 million worth of those products. So they can very much benefit from more domestic production. And that domestic market has an immense amount of room to grow. And the Kazakhstan's government has shown continual dedication to developing the technological market there. Looking at the larger market of information and communications technologies, in 2019, the market was estimated to be around $5.3 billion domestically. So that's like including cell phone companies and like network providers. The market's total revenue was predicted to be around 2.2 billion in 2019. And Kazakhstan's technology market is on the brink of an explosion that will allow them to become one of the largest technology hubs in Central Asia and Europe.
The first competitor is Kcell. Kcell is the largest mobile provider operating with 41% subscribers. The operator provides 2G coverage over all territory of the country. The second largest competitor with lower prices and full coverage is Beeline. The third competitor is Tele2. They offer an even broader coverage of 4G and LTE in significant cities.
So for the differentiation strategy, here, pardon my butchering of that word. What needs to be done here from Apple's standpoint is to really push forward the big tech. It usually has negative connotations in the United States. Well, it can, but what you can see here in the Kazakhstan in a foreign market is that to push forward the Silicon Valley moniker and say that these products are they're American made, they're cutting edge. There is an aspect where you can create difference from the Chinese or the Russian imports, in the sense that these products are going to be at the forefront of technological innovation. But there's also a safety net in terms of security, because you don't necessarily have to push forward the cutting edge as much as you would in what we would consider the European markets or stuff like that, because it's not immediately going to be apparent. And plus, you also want to guard the trademark of Apple, because China tends to reverse engineer them. So you would definitely want to find something a couple generations old to kind of push into the market while still being different.
The market entry mode that we're going to be using is a transnational strategy. So the intense pressure for cost reduction while maintaining a local responsiveness. To do this, so Apple will have to leverage their subsidiary skills and manage the increase of costs in the local market for Kazakhstan. The implementation tactics that we're going to be using is exporting and piggybacking. What this would mean is that exporting will guarantee that they remain or maintain low cost by producing products in their home country and directly selling them to the markets in Kazakhstan. It has low risk and doesn't require a lot of capital. So that's the upside of that. Then we're going to use a piggybacking, which more or less is using other companies such as like providers like Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile to cross-sell products and provide services that otherwise wouldn't be able to in Kazakhstan's local markets.
Sales and marketing strategy. Kazakhstan is a quickly growing population that is largely similar. About 65% of the population is native Kazakh, and the other 20% are native Russian, with the remaining percentage being various smaller ethnic groups. And around 70% of that population practices Islam. This will allow for a standard marketing campaign across the entire country. Kazakhstan also has the added benefit of being very sparsely populated at about only 18 people per square mile. This means that our physical marketing efforts can take place in more populated areas like Astana, which is the capital, and Almaty, which is the largest city in the country. We will tailor advertisements to fit the cultural norms of the middle and upper class of that country. Advertisements will be placed among city centers and online, and television advertisements will be run to announce Apple's new entry into the Kazakhstan market. This will entail making sure we understand the cultural background of Kazakhstan, which can be accomplished by employing native Kazakhs to tailor our advertisements. Our sales strategy will not differ from the standard Apple approach used around the world. The stores we open in the country will serve as the main physical point of sale for the company, while telecom company stores and the Apple website will make up the remaining sales. Deals with network operators will also be an important part of the sales strategy. Just the same way that Apple here in the States partners with AT&T and Verizon, we can partner with companies like Kazakh Telecom, Estel, and Dukat to make our products available to those network customers as soon as possible.
For our human resource strategy, we're going to be implementing a geocentric strategy. And this directly ties in with the transnational strategy that we decided to use. And this would prove valid since the company has already established a sense of experience internationally, as well as a well-developed global structure. They also maintain, they'll also be able to maintain strong culture of Apple in other countries and caters to the staffing needs of the host subsidiaries. And then the next slide, we'll be looking at the supply chain strategy. And currently, Apple is globally one of the leading companies for supply chain management. So this diagram here shows Apple's supply chain model. And the three parts that make Apple's supply chain strategy very efficient is this model here, along with the inventory turnover rate and the number of key suppliers that they hold. Right now, their inventory turnover rate is calculated to be at 59, and their key suppliers was sitting at 200 as of 2019.
So when we look at the 3-year pro forma, what we're going to see is if we look at the past 3 years, we see a gross revenue of $265,000, you know, some odd on the end. I know that's, sorry, 265 million. And then it goes down to 260 and then goes up to 274 million. So what we see is about a roughly consistent in a 10,000 gross. So, you know, if we were to follow that trend, you know, we could see it. We could definitely see it going up, you know, and this is roughly estimated to be going up about 10,000 in that trend. And in terms of profit, you know, you've got, you know, 101 million, 98 million, and 104 million. So give or take, it's about a fluctuation, 4,000 in terms of profit. So you would probably see a consistent profit margin of about 100 million, 100 million every year. Now this is, you know, subject to, much like anything else, the economic trends of Kazakhstan and all that other stuff. But all else held constant, we should be able to see the projections coming through much like this.
The CDC issued a level 4 travel health notice for this area due to COVID-19, indicating a very high level of cases in the country. They're labeled red at a level 4. Traveling here would be wiser to do if the country was at a level 1 or a 2. As of April, there were over 200,000 cases of COVID-19 in the country. And with that being said, having such an excessive number of cases, the likelihood of contracting COVID-19 is very high.
So what we've got in terms of the implications of the market entry is that it can be a bit of a gamble, but there is also a consideration that you can see a lot of positives. You know, if it's long term, because if you can really shore up the market before the competitors really get there, you're really going to see a trend where Apple has control of the market and has the partnerships to make sure that their service is being provided well. But if they don't really apply and they're going for more of a short-term approach, that is possible that you'll be able to pull some of the, you know, the Kazakh GDP out and, you know, sell some products. But overall, you're going to miss out on that explosion. So it's a mixed bag. I think Apple could go either way in terms of an entry into Kazakhstan. But other than that, you know, that's all we've got.